Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Delano D'Souza. Coming up, 10 years after China ended its one-child policy, birth rates continue to slide. The move comes despite authorities in Beijing rolling out a string of measures to reverse the trend. Plus, the founder of Indian fashion brand Kartik Research opens up about his vision for the company after showing at Paris Fashion Week for the second time. It's been 10 years after China ended its one-child policy. Birth rates in the country continue to fall. Data for 2025 show births are down for the fourth year in a row. The move comes despite authorities in Beijing rolling out a string of measures to reverse the trend, including putting into place a 13% so-called condom tax. France 24's team on the ground in Beijing filed this report.
Different colours and sizes. It's items like these that can now cost some 13% more. Beijing has scrapped a long-standing value-added tax exemption on condoms and contraception because the trend is undeniable. China's population has been contracting since 2022. One of the reasons, for many, being a parent is just too expensive. Some now opt to raise pets instead.
Our current financial situation is really only enough to support ourselves right now. If we had a child, the cost would be much higher.
In the long run, we don't plan to have children. Raising a dog is already expensive.
On average, raising a child to age 18 in China costs over 65,000 euros, 13 times more than the average annual per capita disposable income. But Beijing is determined. The tax aligns with China's goal of increasing birth rates. However, some warn if increased contraception costs are passed on to buyers, it may impact those already the worst off in society.
I think that without proper protection, the most immediate consequences are the spread of STIs, HIV, and a higher risk of unintended pregnancy. For teenagers or women with limited financial resources, these risks can be life-altering.
By 2040, the European Central Bank warns low fertility could cut China's GDP growth by 0.3%. The country's pension and healthcare systems would also be threatened.
But with the cost of raising a child here still so high, a few extra cents on condoms is unlikely to make a difference when it comes to China's big demographics problems. The message from Beijing, however, is clear. To safeguard its economy, China needs its birth rate to increase. And for now, that means fewer couples using protection.
At the start of this month, New York's new mayor Zohran Mamdani was sworn in. At the private ceremony on New Year's Eve, the 34-year-old was seen wearing a custom silk tie created by New Delhi-based designer Kartik Research. Besides Mamdani, their clothes have been spotted on A-listers, including actor Paul Mescal and F1's Lewis Hamilton. Kartik Research's founder, Kartik Kumra, was a semi-finalist for the LVMH prize in 2023, and he's just shown his latest collection at Paris Fashion Week. Kartik, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. This is the second time you've shown here in Paris. You're just 25 years old. What's it like dealing with this kind of intense spotlight?
It's cool. No, thank you for having me. I think I'm getting better at handling the stress. I think the first time I remember, I couldn't move my neck left after the show. It was that stressful. But no, it's an interesting experience. I think I don't view it as I don't look at it from a macro perspective very often. I'm sort of, I still have to go to work tomorrow, and but at the same time, it's great that the brand's being placed in these great platforms where we can show our stuff, build our universe, really go for it in a way that would be quite difficult if we were just based in India.
Your brand was founded in 2021 in New Delhi, where you opened your first store. Switched to 4 years later, you opened your second store in New York. What allowed you to make such a bold move without, expanding to other places in India, like Bombay or Bangalore, for instance?
New York's always been our biggest market. Pretty much from the start. When I started the brand as a college student at UPenn. And I would go up for the weekend and do a pop-up in the pretty much on the same block that we have the shop now. And we would pop up over there. We built a little cult following. So it was a pretty logical progression. We also worked with about like 7 stores in New York at one point. And so we just had an audience that was sort of ready for it. Whereas in India, it's like an emerging market. I think it's probably going to take like 10 years before it really has a menswear scene that feels quite developed. But for now, New York felt right.
Because you call yourself an artisanal fashion brand, each article of clothing has some sort of handmade element to it. How do you scale up in that case without, compromising on the quality?
Yeah, it's really tricky. It's a very fragmented supply chain, and there's no like Alibaba style directory where like everything's together. It's a function of like being on WhatsApp way too much. The scale is like challenging for that reason. At the same time, we do have a lot of people in India that are very skilled, and so there are a lot of artisans that are able to contribute. There's a lot of great weavers, and so we haven't really found like any bottlenecks in scale so far. I imagine we won't for the next few years either. At some point, there will be problems, but I think we'll be able to navigate through those.
Because you have a store in Delhi, one in New York. What do you see going forward in terms of your expansion plans? Are you looking at other markets, potentially the Middle East, for instance?
I just took a trip out there, not to look at stores, but it's cool. Like there's a lot of energy in that region. At the same time, I think the next one's probably going to be Tokyo. I don't have a place yet there, but I think that's just something I want to do. It's also like another place similar to New York where we built a little cult following. A bunch of great stores have been like, carrying the brand for a number of years.
I mean, known for street fashion as well.
Yeah, I mean, people really care about how they dress over there. I think in general in like cities where people have to walk around, your only way of signaling is through your clothing, and so people like to differentiate themselves in that regard.
You studied economics at UPenn. What did you think it was about forgotten Indian crafts that would resonate with consumers, not just in India, but around the world?
Yeah, I mean, that had nothing really to do with my education. I think on the side for money, I would resell sneakers when that was a thing in like 2016 to 2019. And, through that process, you go into a bunch of great stores, you learn a little bit more about independent design. And there's this whole like tier of designer and this sort of side of the industry that never really came to India. This independent, super directional, well art directed menswear that just wasn't a thing, and so that felt like a pretty obvious place where it was like, okay, why hasn't anyone cracked this yet? And then when COVID hit, I moved back to India from Philadelphia. I had a bunch of time on my hands. It was either an online internship at night, virtually, or actually just like going for it, taking a risk, and so just went for it.
Did anyone inspire you in the world of fashion?
I mean, there's loads of inspirations or people I look up to from like a business perspective. It wasn't like I've never really had like a mentor in that sense at the start. I think there's a few people that help me now, but I think like Dries Van Noten's always been a big inspiration in terms of, it's super directional and really like takes risks. At the same time, it's been able to scale into like a pretty successful independent business for a long time. And so that was a cool blueprint, but, we do our own thing pretty differently. We sort of operate in the online age, so it's a different strategy.
When I see your clothes, I can tell that there's something distinctly Indian about them, even though they're not Indian, it's not Indian wear, so to speak. I mean, the fact that Zohran Mamdani and Paul Mescal and Lewis Hamilton are wearing your clothes. Are you positioning Kartik Research as a global brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's pretty much the idea. It's, I think if we look 20 years ahead, I think the global fashion landscape looks a little bit different. I think there'll be a Chinese brand that breaks through, a sort of black cultural house from somewhere that breaks through. And I think the idea is we want Kartik Research to be the Indian one.
And very briefly, in terms of U.S. tariffs on India, we know the tariffs are at around 50%. You have a store and you do sell in the U.S. How are you forced to pass that cost on to consumers, or are you swallowing some of it yourself?
So not yet. Mostly we just take the hit. It's not an ideal situation. I think we opened the New York store 2 months before the hike, and so not ideal, but it's sort of out of our control right now. We can, the winners of this policy seem like unclear to me, and so hopefully it doesn't last for a very long time. But while it's there, we just sort of have to navigate it.
And besides the potential looking at the Japanese market down the line, what do you envision for the brand in the short term?
Yeah, I mean, we want to stay the course. We're an independent brand, so the way we grow is sort of dependent on like how the brand is performing. Literally, like the money we make is money that goes back in, and so you just want to stay the course in a very like politically challenging.
Are you happy staying remaining an independent brand?
Oh yeah, I think the freedom is pretty interesting creatively. It also just like pushes you to operate within like smaller margins, and those risks then really pay off when they land.
Kartik, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming in, and it's great to see your successes at Paris Fashion Week, and we'll be looking out to see what you do next. Thank you for joining us. And that's it for this edition of Access Asia. From all of us on the team, thank you very much for watching.